you didn't serve, and part of that reason was your medical history. Why don't we backtrack a little bit and we'll tell the audience a little bit about uh, how you learned, to deal with isolation, deal with health issues and challenge. Let's start back with why you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born with a rare immunodeficiency called SCID. You can basically think of that as being born without an immune system. So I had no way to defend myself against any sort of virus or illness as a kid. And so I was left in isolation pretty much immediately after being born. At around 6 months of age, I received a bone marrow transplant, of which my dad was the donor. And a bone marrow transplant is essentially just like it would help to keep my antibodies up. So it would possibly give me like a working immune system. Um, so I received my first one at 6 months. That ended up failing. 6 months later, we did a second one, my dad still being the donor. And then that kept me going for a while. It was definitely more successful than the first one. Um, and then at the age of 3, I developed lymphoma that was directly correlated with the immunodeficiency. So I'd gotten cancer in my stomach. So the doctors went in, removed the tumor. And then after that, I was doing okay. Like my numbers, my immuno numbers held steady. Um, and I would say probably about from the age of 3 to 9, I was doing pretty good. I didn't go to school. I was homeschooled. I had to be real careful about, going into crowded places and playing outside in the dirt and stuff. My immune system was working, but it was still very frail, still very susceptible to infection and illness. I did get sick a lot as a kid. And then at about the age of 9, the second transplant started to fail again. Um, I had severe cases of pneumonia. My joints, my knees, my ankles, my wrists would swell up. They'd hurt. It's like really bad arthritis. So I couldn't breathe. Like I just felt like it was just like so much pain. And so the doctors were finally like, okay, we're going to have to put you through a third transplant, but we're going to want to do this one a little differently. And so I got moved over to Cincinnati Children's Hospital under the care of a great immunologist there. I think at the time they were like number 1 or number 2 in the world for pediatric cancer treatment, and like number 3 or number 2 for immunodeficiency treatment. So it was great, great, great hands to be in. And yeah, this third transplant was a lot different in that they wanted to do chemotherapy beforehand to sort of prep my body and wipe out any like remaining immune system that I had, and then bring a whole new one in so that I wouldn't reject the new one, if that makes any sense. Um,
Hmm.
and so that was set to be like a 6 month long process rather than just, you go in, you receive a transplant, and then you're done. And so it was a 6 month stay in the hospital. And then a week before I was going to go into that, I was diagnosed with lymphoma again for the second time in my neck. And so the doctors basically came in, they told me, okay, like we're going to have to treat the cancer and then do the transplant back to back. And they basically told me and my mom, like, your chances of making it are less than 5%. But we'll go ahead and try anyway. And so they removed the tumor, did chemo to get rid of the remaining cancer, and then did more chemo to prep for the transplant. And that 6 month process ended up being about 2.5 to 3 years of just like living in the hospital, living in isolation. And obviously, I didn't go to school. I was not keeping up with my education at all, just because I was focusing on like getting through day to day life. Um, and so I got out, and I really hyped up like the expectations of getting out. Like, oh, finally I could go back to quote unquote normal life, whatever that means, right? Um, And so I get out and I realize that like physically my muscles had atrophied so much of just being like, laying in the bed for so long. So I really couldn't do anything. Like I could barely walk up the stairs, couldn't walk to the end of my driveway. Like it was tough. It was a tough recovery getting out. And so yeah, little by little after getting out, I had started walking the stairs and walking the driveway. And eventually that kind of just compounded over time, walking, from the driveway to the street and then from the street to the neighborhood and so on and so forth until I could until I could run or get back on my bike or get in the gym. Um, but all that to say, it was definitely tough. Like I felt very, very left behind in many, many ways when I got out. Um, Definitely education wise. Like I got out at around the age of 12 or 13 and I didn't know how to tie my shoes. I didn't know my times tables. I didn't know how to do long division. Like pretty basic stuff. I didn't know how to copy and paste on a computer. Basic stuff that you would learn, as a kid,
Hmm.
but never just really took the time, just because we were so focused on other more important things, I guess. Um, but yeah, I think
I think you're a
during
little
that,
preoccupied at the time.
yeah, exactly, preoccupied with health stuff for sure.